I sometimes refer to this as a threshold function because I think it makes you aware of some of the extra power that Excel has, and it makes you think of some of the capabilities of Excel you might not have suggested. It's programming-like in nature almost. On the other hand, this function can be quite simple. The question is how to use it and when, and why will this make some sense? Looking at the data on the screen here, let's imagine it in this particular organization that management has decided to give bonuses to those people who have certain kinds of job ratings. And in their scheme of things, a 4 is pretty good and 5 is real good. 1 is not so good. And so what they'd like to be able to do here is to provide a bonus of, let's say, $1,000 to those people whose job rating is 4 or 5. Another way of saying this using the word if would be, if your job rating is 4 or 5, you're going to get $1,000. Otherwise, nothing. The if function begins with the idea of a logical test. And sometimes a logical test may be simply, as we're about to use here, a test to see if a value is greater than another value. Or, expand it a little bit and you'll see in column H some symbols here. If we want to refer to something, a cell or a value being greater than another cell or value, we'll use the greater than symbol as you see it here in cell H2. Another way of saying this at times is to say greater than or equal to, and we use these two symbols in this particular order and never the reverse order if that's what you're trying to say. Once you've seen those two, the others here more or less explain themselves. Although this last combination here looks like a contradiction at first. What do you mean less than, greater than? This is the not equal to symbol as used in Excel. And with a smaller zoom factor in place, sometimes you will see these in formulas. It might throw you at first. It looks like a diamond, perhaps. And certainly at other times you will use a simple equal sign. So these are called relational operators, and they're usually at the core of what an if function is all about. The if function typically contains 3 parameters or 3 arguments. We start with a simple test. Now this is confirmed if you were to type in the function here, equal if, no reason to capitalize it as with any function, and as soon as you do type in a function name and then put in the left parentheses, you get that screen tip. And if you have used the if function before, the pop-up screen is just a reminder of what you probably already know. We need a logical test here. And so based on the explanation, that logical test would be for the very first person. If the job rating, this case E2, is greater than 3, this is certainly one way to do this. All the job ratings here are whole numbers, so we could say it this way. Other people think it might be clearer to say greater than or equal to, in which case we would use 4. And that is one example of a logical test. Now again, there are lots of possibilities here. And remember this idea that sometimes you're comparing 2 cells, or a cell with a value, a cell with a formula for the value, and all kinds of combinations. Sometimes, instead of a value, you might be comparing this with a text string, in which case it would be embedded in double quotes. As soon as we click comma here, the bold print tip below this will change to indicate now we're going to provide the answer for when this is true. And another way of describing the if function is simply a function that makes a test and provides us with 2 answers. One for when the test is true, one for when it's false. So the answer could be 1,000 here. That's true. When the answer is true, that's the answer, comma, otherwise 0. Answers sometimes are not just pure values as they are here. Sometimes they are text embedded within quotes. Sometimes a value can be, rather than an actual value, a cell that contains a value. A formula is also another possible answer here. So if we want to put in text here, we could put in double quote. If we want to display nothing rather than 0, we'll put in another double quote. And so we've got a number of options here. I can't think of the appropriate word to put in here, but maybe we'd say not today or no bonus. That's pretty straightforward. Maybe that's rubbing it in, but you could certainly say that, or you could be a wise guy and put in some other text. And as always, if you have only a single set of parentheses in a formula, all you need to do is hit enter. Now you may be wondering why I made the column wider. It's certainly not to contain the answer because the answer is going to be relatively short, either 1,000 or no bonus. But in order to display the function more clearly, I have made the column that much wider. Eventually, I would make it narrower. So the result here is no bonus, and you can see by the job rating there. And we might copy this all the way down the column or simply drag it across enough cells to make sure that this is working properly. And you can see what's happening here. And there are many, many times when the if function is simple, straightforward, just as it is here. Hit F2 here, we can see it again more clearly. But there are lots of options, lots of capabilities here as to how we might do this. And we could have rephrased it in a different way. I don't think it would have been better, but we could have said if E2 less than 4, comma, no bonus, comma, 1000. Phrase it in the opposite direction. Quite a few possibilities here. But that's the basic layout of the if function.